Validation is one aspect you simply cannot build application without it. It ensures that whatever the user inputs aligns perfectly with what your backend expects. In this video, we will dive into validation in .NET. We explore how to use inbuilt annotation for validation, and we also go a step further by leveraging external library like Fluent Validation to validate our property. But at the end of the video, you will have the knowledge to set up production-ready validation for your .NET Web API. Hello, welcome to Cliff Tech. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this video, leave a comment, and share this content with others. Let's get started. To get started, I already have a project set up. This is a simple web API, a default one. So anytime that you create a project using Visual Studio, you will get this default API, which is a weather forecast API. So right now, if I'm running this application right now, go to my Postman right here. You can see when I made a request, now the application is not running. Now it's running. I will get some kind of a random weather forecast information right here. So this is the response. But we are going to leverage what we call validation. How do we validate a property in .NET? So first, I want to go to my project right here, and I'm going to create what we call construct. So construct, if you have been watching my videos, all my constructs are DTO. So basically it's a DTOs that we just data transfer object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder right here, and then we are going to call this construct. And this construct is where we are going to put in some kind of information in there what we want to validate. So first we want to start, and then by deleting all of this, we don't need the weather forecast anymore because we are going to do our custom stuff. So let me delete all of this right here. Let's go to the controller and then make sure we delete the weather forecast controller. So now we don't have anything. We are just going to start. So what we are going to do first is that we are going to create some property, and this we are not going to use any database, or we are not going to come up with a complex web API. We are just showing you how you can set up validations, and basically is the construct that you are going to validate, which is the data transfer object. Because building web API, what you are doing is that data transfer object, which is the DTO, is what the user is going to request. So you may have request product, product response, or we have login user request. So all these things are called DTOs. So you want to validate that because that is what you are exposing to the user. So let's go here. First of all, let's start with how we can work with annotation validation. So I'm going to say that I'm going to have annotation user request. So we have this right here, which we are going to learn how we can validate this. So basically what we are going to do is that we are going to have some kind of user properties in here, and then we will validate it. So first, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say that public right here, we have a name, we have email, which is good. The AI is trying to give us this. So basically this is what you are going to do and your application. So if you are creating DTOs, or you are creating a request or construct, this is what you normally do. You have this, but there is inbuilt annotation that can help you to validate this. So this comes from the component model.annotations. So if you are going to use the namespace using .system component model.annotations, that is what you need to use. So first, when we have name right here, we can first say that the first thing that we want to see is that the name is required. So we can then put this, and then we see that the name is required. So the name is required right here. So we need to make sure that we import that namespace. So you are going to import this namespace. component model dot data annotation. So let's try and bring this. So basically it's a data annotation that you are using to validate your data. So very in the simple context, that is what we are doing. So we have here what we are telling .NET is that this name is required. So whenever the user is trying to enter something, we have to make sure that they will not leave the name out. It should be required. So the next thing we want to do is that if the user refers to that, we want to send something to them. We want to tell them that this name is required. So what I'm going to do is that we are going to have what we call error message. So let's make sure we do error message, and the error message we are going to bring right here is going to be first name. So we're going to say that first name required. So first name is required. So whenever the user refuses to enter something, we will send this message to them. So first name is required. That is basically what we are doing. So that is it. And this is data annotation validation. So we can do the same for the rest. So to do the same for the rest is very easy. You go ahead and then you do the same, but the concept is the same. You can set the max, the minimum, number of character or string that you need. You can set all of them here. But we are doing it very simple because the focus is going to be on the Fluent validation. So what we are going to do is that we're going to say that this is what we want to do. This is what I have here. I have a data prepared and I have all the validation in there. So I'm going to put it there. So what we have is we have first name. We are saying that we are trying to require the first name. So if you don't want any error, you can then go ahead and make sure that this is public required string, right? So let's see if it comes, right? So that those error goes, right? So let's make sure it's not optional, right? So let's make it required. Let's make it required so that we don't get this warnings coming in. And let's make all this thing required because it's required. We all basically need it. So you cannot see that you are not adding this. So that now we have perfect stuff. But let's go through it. The first thing is that we have this coming from the data annotation namespace, and then it's telling .NET that this property is required. So anytime that we are trying to do anything, we are saying that this is required. So when you check this right here, you see this is basically it. When we just put this one on, you can see we have something here called required, and then the required has error message. So the error message is what will throw to the user. So that is very simple. So we do the same for the rest. So the rest too, you can see we have to make sure that this is email. So when we check this, what you can see is that in this one, we have two. We first have required, and then we also have email. So this is also coming from the same namespaces, telling .NET that they're supposed to be valid email. So basically, that is how the data annotation validations works. So we also can set the minimum, or the maximum length of a certain thing that we need. So here we are saying that the password, the minimum length is supposed to be 6. Right, so we can also set the maximum, but we are certified with the minimum. So here we are also doing something wonderful right here. Let's check this one, and then you can see we are doing something like compare. So we have password, and then when the user enter the password, we want to check. So we do the compare, and this is also coming from the data annotation validation. So let's put this into a real world scenario where I'm going to create a controller, and then in the controller we are going to call all of this so that you see how it works, right? So to do that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a controller called base controller, and then inside the base controller we can then call this. So let's go and then see that base controller. So basically in the controller we are going to make sure that things work in the way that we want. And let's make sure that this is .NET Web API. So let's tell .NET that this is API with a route of API. So this is basically what we are telling .NET that this is so. And the next thing we need to do is controller base, so that this become a controller, .NET controller. So now we have this, and what we need to do is we are going to do some kind of a constructor stuff right here. Now, what we want to do is that we want to make sure that we have access to that construct, and then we use it here so that we can just make a request. So since we are not using the database, we can just return whatever the user trying to enter. So let's go and create this endpoint. So first of all, I'm going to have HTTP post because we basically want to post. So we post, and then we are going to have public action resource. So let's see that we want to have action resource coming in, and we can give it a name, any name that we want. So I'm going to give it annotation because we are going to do the rest with Fluent. So what this is going to take is that it's going to take in from body. So taking in from body, so it's DI is trying to suggest. So we're gonna do this, and then it's gonna take in the annotation user register request, and then we are going to put this to a request. And this is, a simple API, building an API. So if you want to learn how to build an API, I have videos on that here in my YouTube channel. So you can just go ahead and learn about how you can build an API with .NET. So this is basically it. So what we are going to have is basically this an endpoint that will help us to make a request using the validation request or DTO. So basically that is very simple. We're going to do this. So this is what we are going to have, and for teaching purpose, I'm going to show you this, the model state. The model state is the results that we get. So this is very simple endpoint. We have annotated this with annotation, and then what we are trying to do is that we have a name, and we take in this annotation DTO that is coming from the user. So when the user put in the annotation, what we are going to do is that we check, we validate it. So in .NET we can use is valid. So the state model will validate for us. So if there is an error, we get an error coming here, right? And if it is valid, we just return okay with the results. So that is basically it. So let's go and make an API call to this and see how it works. So now in Postman right here, I've opened my Postman, and what we are going to do is that we are going to create this. So we're going to create a new request. So we go in here, and then what we are going to do is that we have to make sure that everything is JSON. So we post this, then I have the data right here, and then the request is going to be post. So we're going to bring in here the weather forecast, and then now we have changed this. So we're going to say that this is going to be an API / annotation. So when you check what we have in here, go to base controller API, we have this annotation right here. So let's run this application and go back to Postman, and then you see that /. So this is what we are making a post request to this. So let's send the request, and then you can see that we are getting the response in here. So we are doing the validation, but now everything is working because we have go with the validation rule. So we have the validation rule is now passing. What if we do something and make it wrong? So let's check. Let's go down right here and then make sure that the password, we change it. So let me change the password. because first thing is that we are having a password here. We are trying to compare the password. So confirm password and password is supposed to be the same. So let's make a request. And now something is showing here. Password do not match. It means that we are doing something bad. Password do not match. Because in our notation, when we go to our here, we have something here. And then we are saying that the password, we are comparing them. And each one of them is supposed to match. So the password we have and compare password supposed to be the same. And if it's not the same, what we are saying is that password do not match. That is the error response or error message we want to return to the user. And you can see in our Postman, we have exactly that. Password is not matching. So what if you, now I go back and make sure that the password match. And then in here, I'm not going to put anything in there. So let's say I forgot to enter my first name. I'm filling a form, which the data was sent to a certain API, and I forgot to enter my first name. So what will happen? Let's make it a request. Boom, there is an error coming in. First name required. So you can do validation in your .NET straightforward using the data annotation validation approach, where you use a certain annotations in your DTO or your module or whatever you want to validate, and then you use that to validate your property. So this is very simple. But what if you are working on a complex data and then you want to do more stuff? That is where Fluent Validation comes in. So let's go and then go ahead with another approach. So what we are going to do is that we are going to install that one from our Nugget or however you call it. So let's go ahead and then install Fluent Validation and come up with more complex validation approach. So the next thing we are going to do is that let's go to here and launch. Here we go for Nugget. So here we're going to say Fluent Validation. Just search that. And the one that we want is basically Fluent Validation right here. Let's do that. And then also make sure to also install the dependency injection one extension. So just these two that you need. So Fluent Validation and then Fluent Dependency Injection extension. These two can then help you to set up a production ready validation. So we're going to do a lot of complex stuff right here. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and create another construct. We want to come another approach so that we can use our Fluent Validation to check validation, to validate a property right here. So that is what we're going to do. So we go ahead and I'm going to have some kind of another construct coming in. And then what I want to call the construct basically is very simple. I'm going to call it business, right? So let's go with business registration type. So let's call this construct business registration type right here. This is the construct. And then I'm going to bring in the construct. I've already created a construct, which is very easy. It's just a property that we have in here. So these are the properties. Very simple like that. And this one too, if you want, we can go ahead and then trying to see require or something like that. And then it will work. You can also leave it default, but just to avoid some kind of warnings that will come in. So we have this. We are going to create another folder called validators, because how we do Fluent Validation is different from how we do data annotation validation. So with the data annotation or annotation validation, we do everything in the data, right? Or in the module or in the property we are doing. But with the Fluent, we can create external class and then we just inject our property in there and we write our validation custom rule or whatever we want in there. So to do that, we are going to put all of them in a folder called validator. So let's go and create a folder right now called validators, or something like that. So let's go and create a class, another class. And with Fluent, we can do a lot of things. So let's go and create a first class for the business. So what I'm going to do that if you have business registration validator, that is what we have. So when you create this, Fluent has an interface that you need to make sure your application or your validation class is making use of it. So that is the abstract validator interface. So what we're going to do is that we're going to inject that validator right here. So make sure to import that from the Fluent. And then what the validation, what that interface does is that it takes in the property or the class or the DTOs. So right now, with the data annotation, we are doing everything here. And then with Fluent, we have created this class here, which has a property in it, right? So basically, this is our construct, our DTO. We want to then validate this. So what the Fluent is telling us that, okay, there is an interface for this. So the interface will take in what you want to validate. In this case, we want to validate the business registration request. That is the class we want to validate because the property in that class is what we want to validate. So we have to make sure we bring that one too. So we are going to import that. Go ahead and then import that. So now we have this, but we are not done. We also need to go and have a public class called business registration validator or something like this. And then in here is where we are going to write the rules. And let's start. The AI is trying to suggest a rule, but this is not the rule we are going to use because we're going to do something more complex. So first of all, if you want to write a rule, you see that rule for. So the rule that we are going to write is for what? What property? So this rule is for maybe property name, property ID, or property. So before every property is going to have a rule for. So that is it. So we're going to do that. We're going to say that we just use our .NET knowledge here, and we're going to say that first we want to have company name. And then you can see that we are getting the suggestion because now this is the property we have in the business registration validator class or business registration request class. We have all this property in there. And the first one is the business name. So with the business name, what you are going to do is that you're going to write a rule for that. So what we can do is that we're going to say something like that. And then here are some of the the required thing that we can do. We can write a custom, rule for it. We can say that we have to make sure it's empty or it's not empty. So this is all coming from Fluent Validation. But what we're going to do is that we have to make sure that it's not empty. But if it is empty, what we want to do is that we want to give it a message. So we're going to say that, write a message, and then the message you are going to say that company name required. So company name required. We don't want to go with the AI suggestion. So this is what we have. This is the rule for this property name, company name. So it has something similar with this because this is the data annotation. In data annotation, we say required. We have the error message in, and straightforward. We are done. But you need Fluent Validation when you are working with more complex data. Let's say you are working on a big project where there is a lot of properties in there. You cannot go ahead and do all of this. Your code will not be very concise. And then you are using separation of concern. So you have to make sure that each class is doing one thing, exactly one thing. So in here, we have this validate class, which what is doing is that it's trying to validate the business registration request. That is all. So that is the thing. The key thing that you need to understand is the rule for. It tells you what property are you writing the rule for. So that is one thing that we need to take note of. Rule for. So the rule is for this property. The rule is for this. So with that, the Fluent has a lot of validation rules. You can even come up with a custom ones, but there is a lot of them. that you can come and then write with it. So one thing that I wanted you to understand is the rule for thing that we will always need to, and then the rest of the requirement or whatever you want it to put in there will come. But because we are telling the Fluent Validation that we are writing this rule for this property, right? So with that, I have this, I have all the rule that I want to give it. You can give it any rule you want if you want, but I wanted to keep it very simple. So this is the rule for all of them. It's the same, just the rule for comes in, and then the rest will be what you want it to be validated. So I have this rule, and that is basically what I'm doing. And this is it's not complex, but let's go through this. This is the rule I have. First of all, I'm saying that the company name shouldn't be empty. We can also go here and write a message for it, right? So we write a message if the user refuses to put the company name. We can say that company name. So let's say company name required. So if the user is not putting in any company name, this thing should trigger it, and then see that company name. So this message will throw to the user. And then we have ID right here, task ID. What I'm saying is that the task ID shouldn't be empty, and then it should match this pattern. So you can also use some kind of regular expression here. So you have any expression that you want to use here, you can also come and use that, right? So that is also the ID should match a certain kind of format. So that is one thing that make the Fluent library more fun to work with. So that is it. And then if user refuse to enter a certain corporate business ID, we will throw a message valid task ID in the format, right? Corporation must have a valid task ID. So it means that if you are a corporate organization, your ID type is supposed to be in different formats. That is the validation we are doing here. And then the year of your business, we are saying is that we want to check your business. It shouldn't be empty because you need to enter something in there, and then get greater than or equal to 2. So when your business revenue, right, we are checking at least 2 years. So we want to check your business revenue must be at least 2 years. And that is the request that we are checking here. And this is just simple stuff. You can go ahead and customize it with all the things. The documentation is there. You can go and look into it and see how you can come up with a more custom validation rule. But what I wanted to show you is how you set it up and how you can use the rule for, and then you just go ahead and have the rest of your validation rule. So when you have a revalidation rule like this, you are not done yet. What you need to do, you need to also register this in your program.cs. So when I come to the program.cs right now, what I'm going to do is that we can have the user registration request, but what I want to do is I want to do the business. So the business registration request, let's go and do that. So what we are going to register is we're going to register this because this is we're going to register this as a scope. I've already I have a video where we learned about the dependency injection.net, the service dependency, what is scope, what is transit, and what is singleton, and all that. We learned that. So go and watch that video to understand why we are using this as a scope. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to register this right here. So we have iValidator, which is coming from the Fluent Validation library, and what we are passing in is our validating DTO or construct, and then we pass in that class is also into that. So now this is available in our application. We can use it any way we want because we have registered it as a scope. So now let's go to the controller, and then now we are going to do another thing. So in the controller right here, now we want to use this. We already have annotation endpoint that validate the annotation, we are going to do another thing. So what we are going to do is that we are going to do a constructor. Now that we have to make sure we inject this into the constructor. So what we are going to do is that we're going to bring in the I validator, right? So and then we pass in what we want to validate, which is the user, business user registration. So let's go back and bring that. So in here is going to be business registration request, because that is one thing we want to validate here. That is the endpoint we want to create. So we're going to say that business registration request, and we bring in the I validator right here. We pass in that, and now we're going to add this into the constructor. So let's go and create a constructor right here, and then we add everything in it. So now we can use this. So we are going to create another endpoint, and then the endpoint is also going to be business. So very, very simple endpoint. So let's go and then create another endpoint. So this is the annotation one. What we can do is that we can close this so that we go ahead and create the rest. So what we are doing is that we can go and have the business one here, and then let's try to bring this. So what we are doing is that, first of all, I'm going to create a private class that will help us to have an error. But now the focus is that we have a validator, which is the Fluent Validator, that help us when we want to validate a business rule. So when we go here, we have a property, which is the business property. When we want to register a business, this is what we need to import. And as our API, we are trying to validate this. So we have created a custom class where we has all the validation rule in there. So when the user enter anything, anytime they want to register a business, we then match that into this validation. And then we come to the controller right here. What is the, let's delete that. Let's delete this. We have only one controller. So the controller, we are injecting that I validator. We are passing in what we want to validate, which is basically that DTO, and then we have added that one into the construct, and then we are creating an endpoint that accepts the business registration request DTO, and then we are going to use that validator. So we are going to create a private class of all of this, so that we will get some kind of error messages coming in the proper way. So error, when we want to check for error, I'm going to make sure we have that class in there, so that whenever there is an error, we will structure the error properly. So I have a private class, and what it's going to do is that it's going to help us to get an error. So this is a custom private class that I created, right? And what I'm doing is that is trying to have validation, results, and then it's matching the error into a format like this for us, right? Don't worry about this. The goal is that we want to learn how the validation is working under the hood. So basically now we have an endpoint. When there is an error, it will return it for us. But when there is no error, we return whatever the user entered, because we are not matching this into any database. Just a simple stuff. So what we are going to do is that we are going to make a request into this endpoint also and see. So now we can then run this application again, and then we go to our postman. So now let's make sure we fix this error where we pass a new name. So this was the previous annotation request. So we can see this is the endpoint right here is annotation. So when you check this right here, you can see this has annotation, right? So you can see we have annotation in there, right? Okay, so what we are going to do is that now we're going to create a new endpoint, and then we are going to bring this as business. So this is also going to be a post request. So let's go to the body, make sure is raw, and then let's bring in the data we want to put in right here. So this is the data where we want to put in. So let's go here and make sure we close this. So this is what we want to do, but our endpoint is not like that. So when we make this to the data annotation, you can see this is the data annotation one. But when you check our controller right now, what you can see is that this endpoint is business, right? So API/business. So let's go back right here, and then in here in the post request, instead of annotation, let's do this. So API/. So this is our first Fluent API request that we are making. So we are making this request, and then it's going to be validated based on the Fluent rule that we have already set, right? So let's go and make a request. And then you can see we are getting something good. Now things are working. Okay, so what if we want to, well, let's go and check the rule. So when we go here into the validator, you can see that name shouldn't be empty. And then in here, the business supposed to be, we say that the business supposed to be 2 years, right? So let's go and then check this right here. And then the year of the business, let's make it 1 year. So now the year of the business, our rule is saying that it's supposed to be 2 years. And now we are making it 1 year. Let's make a request. Boom. We are getting an error. The error is saying that in the business, your business revenue is of 10,000. It must be established for at least 2 years. And this is a complex validation we are doing. So what we are doing is that we will check. So we check for the annual, right? We have to make sure that we check for the business year, the year, right? So if the year is more than 2 years or less than 1 year, we are saying that no, your business is supposed to be 2 years before you can get, some kind of a revenue or something like that, right? So this is the rule that you can even set, custom ones, complex one. So that is it. That is the error you get. So if we set out this one now to 2 years, we hit request, and then we go back, everything is working. But when we go back right now, let's make sure the name is also empty, because we set in a rule that the name shouldn't be empty. Well, let's make a request. So we make a request, and then let's see where is the first name. The first name is not coming. The last name, let's make sure the last name too is not coming. So let's save this. Let's go to our rule. Let's go to our rule right here, company name. So the company name shouldn't be the first name, and this we don't have any rule for it. That is why it's not working. But the company name shouldn't be empty. So if I go around now and hit this, the company name shouldn't be empty. The company name is required. So basically that is it. That is what we have now. So that is the rule for a business validation. So if you are working on the data, that's required data on the business. So let's go and create more. Now that we know how this thing works, let's go and create more. So what I'm going to do is that we are going to also create another one, another construct. We are going to call it product. So what about product? We're going to create more of them. So first, we're going to create another request here. We're going to create product. So product request. So, and then we have the property here, where I'm going to put in the property here. So this is the properties we have for your product. So basically product categories and products. So this is basically it. And this is when you are working with product. Let's say we are working on e-commerce. How do you come up with a certain kind of custom validation rules? So let's go for shipping. I'm going to create that so that we go and create all the validation for this, and then we make API requests to them and see how it works. So let's go and do this. So we have these properties coming in for the shipping. Okay, so then the last one that we want to do is that, initially we used data annotation validation for user. What if we can also do the same in the Fluent validation? So what we are going to do is that we're going to create another annotation right here, class, construct class, or D2 class, whatever you call it. But we are going to also put in this. So it means that now we are going to create a lot of validations. we are going to create a lot of validations, right? So we already have business registration validator. So we are going to create some kind of, so the validator we are going to create next is the product validator. And we are going to make sure that we are coming up with a good validator. And then with the product, we have the product category. So let's go to the product construct, and you can see we have product item and then we have product category. So it means that we need two validation, right? We need two validators. So let's go and create one validator. We can call it product validator. So product validator right here. And what I'm going to do is that we need to bring in the interface. And the interface, what it's going to do is that it's going to first of all validate the product item. So we have the product item, and then the rule for the product item is very easy. We're going to have this. So this is the rule we're going to have for the product validator right here. We are getting an error because it must have a return. It means that we need to make sure we close it from here. There is an error coming in. It needs to have a return. We need to have a public class of product item. Product, why are we getting an error? So let's check this one. Well, the rule supposed to be like this. So we have the product item validator. We are bringing in this interface from the Fluent library, and we are passing in the what we want to validate. And this is the rule we have. We have learned about the rule for, which is what we use. We define that rule for a certain property, and then here we are saying that the name shouldn't be empty. We are talking about the maximum, right? The maximum length, which is supposed to be 100, and then the price is supposed to be greater than 0. So you can also use all these things to validate, right? This is a custom validation rule we are setting. So it means that the price is supposed to have something, right? So the rule for the quantity in stock greater than or equal to 0. So it means that it can be 0, it can be more than that. So all these things are coming from the Fluent. But let's see. So when we want to do this, as I said, all these things are things we can use. You can see all of these things we can use to validate something in the Fluent. So you can see we have a lot of them right here. You can go ahead and explore all of them, and you can also read the doc to understand. But what we are saying is that we have to make sure that the price is supposed to be greater than 0. So that is it. So we can then go ahead and also do the categories right now. So I have the categories here, which I'm going to bring in. We also have to do the category in here. So let's go and close this. So what we are doing for the category is that it's the same as this. But for the category, the store name is not empty, the product is not empty. We write a message like this. If it is empty, what we are going to do is that we are going to go ahead and set validator, and then we say the new validator, product validator, because there is kind of relationship with them. And then say the rule for product, must product is equal to product, select product name and distance count, right? So product name must be unique in the category. So the name supposed to be unique, right? And this is all we are setting, right? Okay, good. So now let's go ahead and also bring in the the user registration validator, which we already have in the annotation, data annotation validation. So what we are going to do in here is that we're going to create another class, which is going to be validator class right here. What we are doing is that this is very simple. We are just doing require, and then we are doing all these things in there. So I'm going to bring in this. This is very basic, right? So this is the rule that we have for the user registration. So we are saying that it shouldn't be empty. If it is empty, we just give it a message that the username required. This is the rule for email required, password, and then we confirm password. So it's the same as we did in the data annotation validation. So that is the same thing. but in here we are using the Fluent validation rule to do that. Okay, so let's go and then also do the shipping, right? So the shipping to where we write a lot of complex custom validation rule. So let's go ahead, and then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you how you can also do this. So this is a custom shipping, and then with the shipping we can do a lot of things in there. So this is where it gets interesting. So let's see how that rule look like. So the rule for shipping is that we are going to do a lot of complex stuff. So first of all, we have a certain countries that we have already set, right? And then what we are saying that the first one is the rule for the receipt name, the person who is going to receive the shipping is not empty, the address is not empty, and then the postal code is not empty. It must request postal code is valid postal country code. So you see, we are writing a logic here, which is a private class, and then we are using that to validate. So we have this rigid, expressions right here we are using to match if the postal code is going to match a certain country like US, Canada, Mexico. So you can do all these things. I just want to show you that you can do all these things. So we are matching in that whatever the user is trying to enter, a postal code, a phone number can be validated using the Fluent validation. So that is it. Very simple. So that is the rule we have in here. We have to make sure that whatever you are trying to enter is equal to that what we have in here. So that is very simple. It's a regular expression, and then we are using it to validate this rule. So we can also we can also make sure that where we want to ship to, when you select a country where we don't want to ship to, we can tell you that we only ship to a certain country, right? So the country that you select, we give you all the country that we want to ship to. So you can explore this, come up with more custom rule. So the package rate, when it's less than 70, and then the country is called to US, right? So when it's less than 30, when the country is called to this maximum package for the country is this. So we can say that a country like US, if we're shipping something to this, we want to have 30 kg or 20 kg. So that is it, a custom rule. So you can do a lot of rules with this Fluent. Let's go and then register all of this in our program dossiers. So we have to make sure that we have all the validation in there. So let's go. Here we are going to register all of them as a scope. So right now we have the new registered one. We have the one that we used to do. So let's close this. So this is we have registered all the validation. So let's go to the controller, and then we have to make sure that we register them here in the controller too, so that we can go ahead and then create an endpoint for all of them. So we already have the business. So what we need is that we need to bring in the user, product, and shipping. So that is one thing that we're going to do is like this, and then we are going to bring in the product request. So we're going to bring in the product request, and then we are going to bring in the shipping. So we are going to add all this to the constructor, and then inside the constructor like this, we're going to have a space like this, and now we have added all this into the constructor. So we are going to create endpoints for each, and then we are going to test this in our Postman to see how it works and how we get the error response and everything in the Fluent validation. So now let's go and create all the endpoints, and then so that we can make a request to check how our validation also, responding to the data we put in or the properties that we have put in. So the first one is the request, where we are using the user request is the same format. So we already have the business here. Let's put the user request. So this is a normal .NET Web API where we are seeing that request, and it taking the user request. We call our validator resource here. This one formats the error for us, and then what happens is that we check if the validation is, everything is valid, because we call this validate, and then we pass in. Make sure we are already using the I validator right here to check. So this that you see, let's check this one, this code right here. So this that we have, this is what we have right here. We have this, and I also have this. So this is basically what we are working on. So this is validated. It's something we have already set in the in the constructor. So when we go here, you can see that we already have these things set up here. So we have this thing set up here. So basically, this is the ones that we are using. So you can see it's validated right here. This is what we are using. So it's trying to call that one and validate it for us, and use this validate and check the requests that we are trying to put in, and see if that match the rule that we have set for that. So that is it. We already have a business. We need the product and shipping. So let's go and do the same for product. And this is nothing. It's the same format. What we are doing is call and check the validate. You call that one the validating rule, and then we check if everything is working. So, and then if it's not working, we just return an error, which is an error format. We have already set that one here in our private class. It formats the error in a way for us. And then this is how it look like. So now we are done with everything. What we are doing is for the shipping is also the same. We call var validation results, and then we call in that validation rule that we set. We then use this from Fluent Validate, and then we pass in the request. We check if it is valid. If it is not valid, we just return a bad request. If it is valid, we just return whatever the user input in there. So let's go to Postman and test all of this and see how this thing works. So in the Postman, we have the business one we have already tested, and this is how the error comes in. We format the error with our private class that we have in the controller. So we are getting that not empty validator. That is the code. So what we are going to do is that we're going to create another request, and then this request we are going to put this right here, and this is it. So this request, we go to the controller. The one that we want to test right now is request. So this is what we want to test, which is user register request. But this time around, we are using the Fluent instead of data annotation. So let's go and see that request like this. Go to Postman and see that this is going to be raw, and because we want to put in raw data, and the data we are going to put in to register the user is this. So first of all, we are matching the rule. We have to make sure that the rule works, and this is the same as the data annotation, but this one is using the Fluent Validation library. So let's send the request, and then we are getting 404 not found. So okay, let's make this post instead of get, like, let's make a post, and then still we are getting 404 not found. Maybe our application is not running, so let's run it again. Okay, so we have to make sure that you are running the application. Let's go and make a request again, and now we are getting this is coming in. So what if now everything is coming in, we are getting the response that we need to get and everything. So what if we want to go ahead and make some mistake? So the password we are checking, we are comparing the password. Let's make the password like this. And now we are getting an error coming in right here that confirm password do not match, right? Equal password validator error. So this is what we are getting from the Fluent, and this error is something we customize, right? So you can also come up with your custom rule or something like that. So this is the registration from the validator, which is the user one. So now let's go into the product, and then let's go to the shipping. So let's go to the shipping. We can go and also try the shipping right here, and the endpoint for the shipping is also shipping. So let's go and copy that shipping, and we can go ahead and see that we want to say shipping. We go to the body, we say raw, and then we copy what we have, the data. I have the sample data, and this is the weight. So let's send. We send, and we have make sure we do post instead of get, and now we get a response. So the shipping is also working. Let's go to the rule that we have for the shipping and make sure that we are making a mistake. So the shipping validator, one rule that we can check is that the recipient name, the person address, city, all of this shouldn't be empty. And then we are also saying that the postal code format is valid for the country. We can also say that the country, right? Let's check for 30. So we see that 70 is for US and then 30 is for this. So let's go and make sure, first of all, let's make sure that the person who is receiving the shipping name is empty right here, and then we make a request and then we get invalid. The name must be must not be empty, right? So this is the error we are getting. So if I put down Clifford and then we go in, the city we have is this city, and then the weight, I'm gonna say the weight should be 100 or something like that. Let's make a request and see if it works. So now we are getting this package coming in. So basically that is one thing. You can also do a lot of validation with the shipping. You can come up with your, so the goal is that Fluent Validation help you to do a lot of custom validation. So you can write a lot of custom validation and then you match that with your property and how you want to do it. So that is basically it. You can try the rest, your hands on the rest, and then I'll make sure that the code is available on GitHub. Pick the code, go through and read the documentation and learn how to use Fluent Validation in the ASP.NET Core. I believe this video has helped you to understand how you can work with annotation validation and also Fluent Validation. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content on .NET, Azure, and software development. Thank you for watching Cliff Tech, and I'll see you in the next video.